The next question is on cancer. So cancer is caused by changes in cells. Describe the effect that cancer has on cells. So again, it's a describe question and it is 2 marks. So I want 2 points stating a couple of facts. Okay, so what is cancer? Alright, and cancer causes the uncontrolled division of cells, which leads to the formation of a tumor. Okay, so cause the uncontrolled division of cells, my first point, which leads to the formation of a tumor is my second. Cells usually become cancerous due to damage in their DNA. Scientists have found a gene called BRCA. This gene usually produces a protein that repairs damage in DNA. Alright. There are 3 times 10 to the 7 females in the UK, and 1 in 400 of them has a mutation in their BRCA gene. 6% of women with this mutation are likely to develop breast cancer. Calculate how many females in the UK could develop breast cancer due to their mutation in the gene, and then to give your answer into standard form. So there are multiple different values in there, okay, and you need to remember to standard form. So whenever you do a maths question, you're going to want to do it so that it's nice and formatted and easy for the examiners to follow your working out. If it's all over the place, we won't be able to see where you're going, and therefore it's very hard to award marks for working out. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to work out how many women in the UK have the BRCA gene. So I need to work out what 1 in 400 is of 3 times 10 to the 7. So to do that, I am literally going to just do that divided by 400. And that is going to give me 3 times 10 to 7 divided by 400. Alright, 75,000 women with BRCA. I'm just doing that so that I can keep track of what value is what. I then need to work out how many of these women are likely to develop breast cancer. Okay, so I need to work out what 6% of this is. So first things first, you need to work out what 1% would be, so you divide that by 100, and then you times that by 60 to get your 60%. Alright, and that is 45,000. Now, at this point, just double check, okay, does this number make sense? Do you think that's roughly 60% of 75,000? Okay, if it doesn't look right, maybe something's gone wrong. If it's too low, so if it was like 20,000, you'll be like, well, that's less than half, that clearly isn't 60. If it's more than 75,000, then you know you've gone wrong somewhere. But always just think, does that my value make sense? The final part of this is to work out standard form. So 4.5, that's going to be my start, times 10, and then I'm going to work out what it is by doing 1, 2, 3, 4. 4.5 times 10 to the 4. Okay, females are likely to develop breast cancer in the UK with the BRCA gene. So, cancer can occur in cells of the breast. This type of cancer is often caused by breast cells being stimulated by the hormone estrogen. This uses information to suggest 2 possible treatments for breast cancer. So the information they've given, so if it ever says use this information, always use the information. That's going to be where some of the marks are going to be. Alright, and it says that estrogen stimulates breast cells to form and leads them to forming cancer. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is a method to block the actions of estrogen. Okay, so use a drug to inhibit the actions of estrogen. Okay, because we're going to we're going to remove the stimulation of estrogen on the breast cells, therefore preventing more cancer forming. Okay, but what we're going to do about the cancer that's already formed, we need to treat it using one of the common cancer treatment methods. All right, and here we're talking about chemotherapy and radiation. So use chemotherapy to target cancerous cells. Okay, we've got a nice 2 bullet points of stopping it from occurring and then treating the one that already has. The next part involves the brain. So cancer can also occur in the brain. The diagram shows the position of the tumour in the brain. Explain why operating to remove this tumour could produce side effects. Include your answer, one of the possible side effects. So first things first, you need to work out where this tumour is. So this first part is judging your ability to recall your structures in the brain. So this is the cerebellum. Right, so the cerebellum is in charge of coordination and control and balance. So if we were to remove this tumour, we're going to lose some of our cerebellum. And if we remove some of our cerebellum, we're going to lose some of the function and the ability to regulate coordination and control and balance. And that is what we're going to write. So first things first, tumour is in cerebellum. All right, removing tumour may disturb the regulation of balance and muscular activity. Okay. Alright, question 4 is on B4, a little bit of ecosystems. So the figure shows 2 types of insects, the blandflood and the mayfly. The young of the blandflood fly live in rivers. They compete with mayflies for algae. Large fish called trout are predators of both flies. Complete the pyramid of biomass for these feeding relationships. Now, key to this is remembering what the pyramid of biomass is. So, pyramid of biomass is roughly, hopefully, if the ecosystem is in balance, is in a pyramid shape. And each one is a different trophic level. Starting with your producer at the bottom. So producers are always at the bottom because they're going to have the largest amount of biomass. Okay, with the consumer at the top. So the last consumer will be at the top, and the order is determined by the order of the food chain. Okay, you cannot change the order to make it look like a pyramid. If your pyramid ended up looking like this, but you kept the order of the food chain correct, that is okay. It means something about an imbalance in the ecosystem, but your pyramid will be correct. So, first of all, we need to work out what our trophic level. So our first trophic level is going to be the algae, because that is our producer. So the algae gets consumed by the mayflies and the blandfoot flies. So these are going to be on the same trophic level. Because if we were going to draw our food chain, okay, so our first trophic level is going to be algae, our second is going to be the mayfly and the blandfoot. They're on the same trophic level, and then you've got your trout. So here you're going to need your ruler. Remember your pyramid of biomass, the length of the bar is a representative of the amount of biomass. So we're going to do 1 bar like that. Okay, so I'm getting smaller because remember your biomass gets lost during each transmission of biomass, okay, because each trophic level is going to use some of the biomass, and then some of it will be lost in processes like digestion. So algae, so that's my pyramid. Okay, so I've got a mark for my shape, but I need to label it. So on this trophic level I'm going to have my blandfoot fly and mayfly. You need to include both because we're talking about the same trophic level. And then at the top we've got our secondary consumer, our trout. Okay, so labels and the shape there. The adult blandfoot flies feed on sugary fluid from flowers. However, when eggs start to develop inside female flies, they start to suck animal blood. Suggest why animals show different feeding behavior when they develop eggs. So they're getting their sugar carbohydrates from the flowers, but the reason why insects suck blood is because they are high in proteins. So they get a large protein supply quite quickly in our blood. Okay, so the reason why insects suck blood is to get access to proteins. Okay, so all you needed to say was that blood contains proteins. Alright, because the females are going to need extra proteins in order to support the developing of the eggs in their okay. So the female flies often bite people and feed by sucking up blood. Before they start feeding, they inject proteins into the skin. These proteins block sensory receptors in the skin. So sensory receptors, what is the function? Is to detect stimulus. Okay, they sense the stimulus. Right. So if we were to block that, we would prevent the ability to detect the stimulus. Suggest how blocking sensory receptors might help the fly. So here you've got to think, why is the fly benefiting from making us not feel the fact that they are feeding on our skin? Think about it. If a fly lands on your skin, you feel it. What do? You swipe it away, so it cannot land and it cannot start sucking your blood. But if you can't feel it, and assuming you don't see it, you don't swipe it away because you don't know it's there, which means the fly has more time to consume the blood, and that is the reason why it does this. Okay, so if you block the sensory receptors, they cannot detect stimulus, right, and therefore do not stimulate a nerve impulse. So if we do not have a nerve impulse being stimulated, we are not going to get the message that the fly has landed. So what this does, this allows the fly to feed for longer periods. This allows flies to feed for longer periods. Alright, because we are not going to swipe them away. After the fly has finished eating, the person has an immune response against the proteins. Antibodies are produced. Describe how antibodies could help the body destroy the proteins. So, the proteins in this case are going to act like antigens. Alright, and antibodies bind to antigens. Alright, and they tag them for the immune system. So, here's my protein. It gets bound by my antibody. What that does is it labels and it indicates to my phagocytes that this is a foreign molecule. And if it's a foreign molecule, the phagocyte will engulf this and destroy it. Okay, so remember the phagocytes, their cell membrane projects out and surrounds the antigen, alright, and engulfs it, taking it in to be digested. So you end up with your phagocyte, alright, having engulfed your protein. That then gets just broken down by enzymes. So, to answer the question, alright, the antibodies bind to proteins which then get engulfed by phagocytes. Just label my phagocyte before I go to the next page. Okay, get engulfed by my phagocyte and then broken down. Scientists are trying to reduce fly numbers. They found bacteria living in the guts of flies that digest the algae that the flies eat. They also found that the gut of the Blandford fly is much more acidic than the guts of other flies. The Blandford fly gets nutrients from the digested algae, which the bacteria has digested, in return for providing an acidic habitat for the bacteria to live in. What name is given to the feeding relation, so the type of relationship shown by the fly and bacteria? So, before, 3 types of relationships between different organisms. Okay, you can have predation, parasitism, and mutualism. So predation is when one organism will eat the other. Parasitism is when you've got a organism that will live off a host organism, and then you've got mutualism, where both parties in the relationship benefit. Okay, which is what's happening here. So the bacteria are getting a habitat that's acidic, that the Blandford fly is supplying, and then the Blandford fly is getting nutrients from the digested algae that the bacteria has processed. So it's a mutualism. Oops. relationship. The scientists have developed a poison that becomes activated in low pH. Explain, so give a reason for, why this poison could kill the Blandford fly but not harm the other types of fly. So the question is in two parts. You have to explain why it could kill the Blandford fly, but you have to also explain why it does not harm the other types. Okay, so it's a two-part kind of question. Don't just answer the one. Right, so why would it kill the Blandford fly? Okay, so the Blandford fly has a acidic gut, which is required for the poison to become activated. So, poison becomes activated in the low pH of the Blandford fly's gut. Poison will not become, so we're now answering the second part. Will not become activated in the higher pH of the other fly's gut. Okay, so again, just always read the question. So it's a two-marker. If you did two-part, if you just done that, you would have got just max 1. You have to give both points to this.